Welcome back. This is episode 6 on mushrooms on Mars. I am your host, Lalita, and in this episode's deep dive, they will be discussing the APH plant growth system on the ISS. So far, we haven't gotten to the mushrooms yet, but we covered what are the different plant growth systems used on the ISS, the International Space Station. Now, why are we speaking about plants instead of mushrooms? First of all, they have studied closed loop systems. They have installed closed loop systems on the ISS. And a couple of plant growth systems are already being tested, and they are growing fresh food on the ISS. It is important for us to understand and learn more about how plants are being grown in space. And this will help us figure out a plan for mushrooms, keeping in mind that mushrooms, mycelium, are not plants. There are some very fundamental differences between, like, say, a tomato plant and mushrooms. But it is important we understand how closed loop systems work and how plants are grown currently on the ISS. So, in the previous episode, we spoke about the Veggie system, which is a small modular system, and it was an open air design. And they had plant pillows, and the water delivery was through a wicking system. Now we are going to speak about the APH plant growth system. This is definitely more advanced than the Veggie system because the APH is called Advanced Plant Habitat, and it's certainly more sophisticated than the Veggie system. So NASA developed Veggie. NASA also developed APH. So first of all, what are the differences? First of all, it is a closed growth chamber versus Veggie's open air design, right? But first we have to understand, why did they develop the APH? It is to study how plants grow in space where there is microgravity, so that we can support long duration space missions. And we're not reliant on resupply missions from Earth. And it becomes a more sustainable life support system. But it is also important that it is a closed loop system. And we are able to recycle and reuse all the resources that we use for growing the plants. So the key features of the APH system is, one, it's a closed growth chamber. Then most of it is automated. It's an automated system. So it can be remotely controlled from Earth. So you can have an APH greenhouse on the ISS, and it can be monitored and it can be controlled from Earth. Then the third feature is it has a very advanced lighting system. So we saw how on the Veggie there's like red, blue, and green LED lights. But on the APH, there's a full spectrum LED lighting. It actually simulates natural sunlight. And then there are customizable light cycles, which kind of mimics the seasons. And all of this can be controlled from Earth remotely. And then there is temperature and humidity control. So there's like very precise environmental controls on the APH. Water and nutrient delivery is through capillary action, and not like the wicking system, because on the Veggie they used the plant pillows, which was like a clay medium, and they used the wicking pad so that the plants get water. Now everywhere the challenge is the same: microgravity. In space we don't experience gravity, and we don't have enough gravity like we do here on Earth. And we're taking Earth plants, So because in microgravity, water does not flow like it does on Earth. So the APH uses capillary action to deliver water directly to the roots of the plant. On the APH, most of it is through hydroponic systems. On the APH, they use hydroponic systems to grow plants. So the water is grown in a nutrient-rich water solution rather than on soil. So we just skip the whole soil part. So APH is definitely more advanced, and it is also more sophisticated than the veggie system. And of course, the airflow and the gas exchange is monitored constantly. The CO2 and the O2 levels, the humidity, all of this is constantly monitored, and it can be adjusted. The real-time imaging and data collection helps to figure out whether systems are working properly. And also it's done through sensors and cameras, the whole, all that good stuff. And it's scalable. The whole thing is scalable, and it's modular in design. They're trying to grow wheat. Now, earlier we were growing lettuce in the veggie system. Wheat is calorie dense and nutrient dense. So APH allows researchers to figure out how microgravity affects grain development and seed production. There are multiple experiments being done, and they are exploring different light cycles and environmental control, and simply by growing more complex crops than just lettuce. We should probably be talking about microgravity in the subsequent episodes, because throughout we talk about how microgravity affects how plants are grown in space. So we can discuss more about microgravity and its impact on crops grown in space. Let's move on to the deep dive discussion, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye.
Okay, so picture this, right? You're having a taco night, but not just any taco night, no. The lettuce in your tacos.
Okay.
The tomatoes, maybe even some spicy peppers. It was all grown in space.
Wow.
Sounds kind of wild, right? Like something straight out of Star Trek.
It does, but it's actually closer to reality than you might think.
Yeah, and that's what we're diving into today. NASA's Advanced Plant Habitat,
Okay.
or APH for short.
APH.
We've been digging through research papers, articles, all that good stuff.
Lots of material.
Oh, tons. And trust me, after going through all this, I tried to start like a little hydroponic setup, my own little space garden.
Oh, very cool.
Let's just say it did not go so well.
I've been there.
But the good news is NASA definitely knows what they're doing when it comes to growing stuff in space.
They really do. Way more than us, that's for sure.
So much more. And the APH, this is their pride and joy, right?
Absolutely. It's a huge leap from that simpler veggie system they have on the ISS.
Okay, so for anyone listening who, maybe hasn't geeked out on space botany lately,
Sure.
Can you give us the rundown? What is it about the APH that makes it so special?
So imagine, right, you're trying to grow a tomato.
Okay.
But not just any tomato. You're trying to grow it in a box.
Okay.
A high-tech box, orbiting Earth at thousands of miles an hour.
Yeah.
There's practically no gravity, no real sunlight.
It's a challenge.
Huge challenge. We have to bring our own sun, basically.
I can barely keep a basil plant alive on my windowsill, and that's with, actual sunlight.
I hear you. I've killed my fair share of plants, too. That's why the APH is so important. It controls for all of that, every little thing. It's like super precise.
So it's like a space greenhouse, but on steroids or something?
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so it's high tech. But what does that actually mean? Like, what's so special about it?
Well, for starters, they have these LED lights that are amazing. Like, you can fine-tune them to perfectly match the light from the sun.
Oh, wow.
Or, and this is the really cool part, you can make them mimic the light on Mars.
Wow.
And the way they water the plants, forget about gravity. They use this thing called capillary action.
Capillary action.
Yeah, it's where water moves through a material, kind of like how a paper towel soaks things up.
Oh, interesting.
So even without gravity, the plants still get the water they need.
Okay, now that is impressive.
Oh, so
that's some serious space-age gardening going on there.
yeah.
But why go through all that trouble? Why is it so important to, micromanage every little thing?
It's not just about keeping the plants alive, it's about understanding them. Like, how does a plant grow differently when it doesn't have gravity pulling it down?
That's a good question.
Right. Do its roots grow differently? Does it need different nutrients? These are all things we need to know if we want to grow food on, say, a long mission to Mars or something.
It's like we take it for granted, right?
Yeah.
That plants just grow.
We really do. We take for granted how much work goes into it, how many factors are involved.
So all these controls, this is about more than just keeping a few plants alive. It's about figuring out how they tick, but in space.
Exactly. It's fundamental research that could have a huge impact on how we think about growing food, not just in space, but here on Earth, too.
I never thought of it like that. That's really cool.
It's amazing what we can learn when we take something as basic as a plant and put it in a completely alien environment.
So we're talking about figuring out how plants tick in space, but we started with, like, tacos.
Right.
So bring us back to the food. What is it about growing something like a pepper in space? What makes it different from growing, lettuce?
It's about complexity.
Okay.
Think about lettuce for a second. It's pretty basic, right?
It is, yeah.
Leafy greens grow super fast and they don't need a ton of light.
Right. Low maintenance.
Exactly. Now, peppers, totally different story.
Yeah.
They need a lot more light, they're picky about temperature, and they take way longer to grow, even down here on Earth.
So that's why growing those peppers in the APH, that's kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal. It proves that we can grow these more, demanding plants in space.
I was going to say, it's like the difference between keeping a goldfish in a saltwater aquarium, right?
Perfect analogy.
One is definitely like more work than the other.
For sure. And with the APH, we're not just showing that we can grow these things in space. We're really digging into how they grow differently up there.
Oh, okay. What do you mean?
So remember those radishes they grew in the Plant Habitat O2 experiment?
Yeah, I read about that.
So turns out in microgravity, those radishes, they got a little confused about which way to grow their roots.
Confused, like, what does that even mean? They were growing up instead of down.
Kind of. So down here, gravity, it's a pretty clear signal for plants, right? Roots down, shoots up.
Yeah, makes sense.
But in space, that signal, it's practically gone. So with the APH, scientists could test different light levels to see if that would, give the roots a direction.
Oh, so like tricking them into growing the right way?
Exactly. It's all about finding ways to optimize these plants for a zero-gravity environment.
It's like giving them a little nudge in the right direction, even without gravity there to do it.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So it's not just about, can we grow this? It's about how do we tweak the environment to make sure it grows the way we need it to?
Precisely. And those tweaks, they become even more crucial on long-duration missions. We need to make sure these plants are as productive as possible.
Right, because we're talking about potentially feeding a whole crew with this stuff.
Exactly. And, it's not just about, the roots growing in a weird direction. Microgravity, it can mess with plants at a fundamental level, even down to their cells.
Okay, so we were talking about cells before. Break it down for me. What's actually happening in there?
Okay, so imagine this. Every plant, it has this set of genes, right? Think of them like light switches. When a gene is on, it's basically telling the plant to do something, like build a certain protein or whatever.
Right.
But here's the thing. In microgravity, some of those switches, they get flipped differently than they would on Earth.
Because of the lack of gravity.
Exactly. And when those switches get flipped differently, it can change a whole bunch of stuff, like how the plant uses water, how it fights off diseases, all kinds of things.
Wow. So space is basically like hitting the reset button on how a plant works.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just the genes. Even the way plants transport water and nutrients, that's different in space, too.
Because they don't have gravity to help them out.
Exactly. Here on Earth, gravity lends a hand, helps move the water up from the roots.
Right.
But in space, they got to work a little harder, Capillary action comes in handy here.
Right. Got to find workarounds.
Exactly. Plants are incredibly adaptive, but these adaptations, they aren't always a good thing,
Oh, how so?
Well, some studies have shown that plants grown in space, they might be more vulnerable to diseases, and their growth, it can be a little stunted sometimes.
So maybe space isn't the best place for a relaxing plant vacation after all.
Maybe not. But here's the thing. This is where the APH comes in, right? We're not just learning about these challenges, we're using that knowledge to figure out how to make things better, how to create systems that can really support life in space.
So thinking long term, if we ever want to send humans to Mars, we're going to need to take our plants with us.
Exactly. And we can't just be sending up bags of fertilizer every few months, right? We need a system that's self-sustaining. And that's where the idea of a closed-loop system comes in.
Okay, closed loop system. Now we're talking about creating a little bubble of Earth out there in space.
In a way, yeah. Think of it this way. You have your APH, happily growing all sorts of goodies, but instead of just tossing out the plant waste, you find a way to recycle it.
Okay, like composting.
Exactly. You break that waste down, turn it into fertilizer for the next round of plants. Nothing goes to waste.
So it's like a perfect loop, right? You're taking the waste and turning it back into fuel for the system.
Exactly. It's all about creating this closed ecosystem where everything is connected.
That's amazing. But what about the air and water in this bubble? Like, how do you even begin to tackle that?
Okay, so we all remember photosynthesis, right? Even I managed to retain that from high school.
Yeah, plants use sunlight to make food, and they release oxygen, right?
Exactly. And they take in carbon dioxide. So picture this. You've got your APH. It's pumping out oxygen, cleaning the air for the crew.
So it's like its own little air purifier.
Exactly. And it gets even better. Plants, they're really good at using water efficiently.
Right.
And any moisture they release, well, we can capture that too and reuse it.
Wow, so we're not just growing food, we're talking about creating a whole life support system.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a mini Earth right there in your Martian habitat.
So how close are we to actually, like, packing our bags and heading for Mars with all this?
I mean, we're not launching tomorrow, but every little bit of data we get from the APH, every experiment, it's bringing us closer to that goal.
It's just wild to me that something as simple as, I don't know, growing a plant.
Right.
It could be the key to us living in space one day.
It is. And it's not just about space, you know. All this research, it could have a huge impact on how we grow food right here on Earth, too.
That's what I was thinking. Like, what if we could use this technology to grow food in places where it's really hard to grow things now?
Exactly. Imagine vertical farms using APH tech right here in the middle of cities.
No more shipping lettuce across the country. That would be huge.
Right. Fresh, local produce all year round. Or think about places that don't have a lot of water. These closed-loop systems, they use way less water than traditional farming.
That would be a game changer for so many people. It's amazing to me how we can take something that's a challenge, like growing plants in space, and it ends up giving us solutions to problems back here on Earth.
It's like we're pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and in the process, we're learning so much that we can apply right here at home.
Exactly. Well, I have to say, after learning all this, I feel a little bit better about my own less than successful attempt at hydroponics.
Hey, everyone starts somewhere, right?
That's true. That's true. So the advanced plant habitat, it's not just about growing space salad. It's about a sustainable future for all of us, whether we're on this planet or beyond.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for having me.
This was amazing. Thanks for taking us on this wild ride through the world of space plants. And for everyone listening, until next time, stay curious.
Wow, wasn't that fascinating? I think one of the most complex plant experiments conducted on the ISS is the experiment that used APH to grow the chili peppers. Fruiting plants are really affected by microgravity. So, with that, we are going to bring this episode to a close. The next one, the episode number 7, would be about BPS plant growth system. Now, we have 2 more systems after that to discuss. And then we are going to speak about Melissa. And that is done with collaboration with ESA, European Space Agency. And that is very interesting because that is a complete closed loop system. It includes all the components. But that is down the line. So the next episode is going to be about BPS on the ISS. And then we still have 2 more to discuss. the LADA system, and then the bioculture system. The bioculture system is not really about growing plants, but about tissue culture, to understand plant growth. But that's one of the experiments being conducted on the ISS, and I think we should definitely delve into that. So on that note, let's close up now and see you all later for episode 7 on the BPS system. Goodbye.